For 2 agonizing weeks, the small town of Northwood was shrouded in a fog of fear. A 9-year-old boy named Leo had vanished while walking home from a friend's house. Search parties combed the woods, police went door to door, and his face was on every telephone pole. But there were no leads, no witnesses, no ransom notes. It was as if he had been erased from the earth. The hope that had once burned bright was starting to dim, replaced by a quiet, collective despair. In a small house on the edge of town lived a woman named Clara, and her African grey parrot, Kiwi. Kiwi was a clever bird, known for mimicking the telephone and the doorbell. But for the past week, Kiwi had been different. He had stopped his usual chatter and had begun repeating a single strange word over and over again. "Basement," he would squawk, his voice a perfect chilling imitation of a panicked child. "Basement, basement, basement." At first Clara ignored it. Birds pick up strange things. Maybe he heard it on the television. But Kiwi was relentless. From dawn until dusk, the word echoed through her small house. Basement. It became unsettling. Then, it became disturbing. The parrot's voice was filled with a frantic energy, an urgency that made the hair on Clara's arms stand up. There was a desperate quality to it, a mimicry so precise it felt like a memory. One afternoon, while the police chief was giving a grim update on the news, Kiwi let out a particularly loud shriek from his cage. "Basement." Clara stared at the bird, a wild, impossible idea taking root in her mind. Leo had walked past her house every day on his way home from school. What if the parrot hadn't heard the word on TV? What if he had heard it from outside? Her heart pounding, she called the police station. She knew how insane she sounded. "My parrot," she began, her voice trembling. "He keeps saying a word. Basement." The dispatcher on the other end was silent for a moment, and Clara could practically hear him rolling his eyes. "Ma'am, we're very busy." But Clara persisted, her voice rising with the same urgency she heard in her parrot. "You don't understand. He sounds like a scared little boy." Against all odds, against all procedure, a weary detective named Miller decided to follow up on the crackpot bird lady. He thought it would be a 5-minute visit to appease a concerned citizen. But when he walked into Clara's house, he froze. Kiwi, perched in his cage, locked eyes with the detective and screamed the word, "Basement." The imitation of a child's voice was so eerily accurate, so filled with genuine terror, that it sent a shiver down the detective's spine. This wasn't just a bird mimicking a sound. This felt different. "Has anyone new moved in nearby?" Detective Miller asked, his professionalism kicking back in. "Who lives next door?" Clara pointed to the quiet, unassuming house next to hers, the home of a reclusive old man who rarely left. "Mr. Gable," she said. "He's lived here for years." The house had already been checked. Mr. Gable had been polite, cooperative, and had said he'd seen nothing. But the parrot's frantic cry echoed in the detective's ears. Detective Miller walked next door, this time with a search warrant. Mr. Gable answered, his face a mask of annoyed confusion. The police searched the main floor. Nothing. They searched the upstairs. Nothing. Then, they went to the basement door, which was locked. Mr. Gable claimed he'd lost the key years ago, but the detectives didn't believe him. They broke the door down. The smell that hit them was one of dust and damp earth. The basement was dark and cluttered, but in the far corner, behind a stack of old furniture, they found him. It was Leo. He was huddled on a dirty mattress, pale and weak, but alive. He told them how the man had grabbed him, dragged him into the house and down to the cellar. He had screamed and screamed for help, his voice growing hoarse, until he had no strength left. He screamed the one word he hoped someone might hear through the thick basement window near the ground. Basement. No human had heard his desperate cries. The sound had been too faint, muffled by concrete and earth. But it hadn't been too faint for a parrot sitting by an open window next door. Kiwi had heard the boy's terror. He had latched onto the one, repeated word, And, in the only way he knew how, he had become the boy's voice. He had broadcast the child's desperate plea, until someone was finally forced to listen. The news of the rescue spread like wildfire. Kiwi the parrot became a local hero. Clara's house was flooded with gifts of fruit and toys for the bird, who had solved the case no one else could crack. When Leo was finally well enough, he came to visit. He stood before the cage and whispered, "Thank you." Kiwi just ruffled his feathers and chirped softly, his mission complete. Sometimes the smallest voice can carry the most important message, and hope can be found in the most unlikely messenger.